And I won't spend too much time on introduction here, but Jeremy Cady, like I said, is our legislative director. He spent several years as the chief of staff to Shane Scholler in the House in a leadership position, so he knows the House very well as the legislature. His wife Heidi is in the back. They're still newlyweds. And Jeremy's been with us, what, a couple months now?
December 15th.
Yeah, so early December. What really sold me on Jeremy, I knew he was right, technically it had the skill set and all those things, and was a conservative, had all the values. But I went to the Americans for Prosperity, AFP National Conference in Dallas, and I saw Jeremy and Heidi, and they were honeymooning there. And it was their idea. And they had gotten engaged at the AFP conference the year before in Tampa. So I wouldn't even do that in terms of honeymooning at an AFP conference. So they're true believers, and they're the real deal. But with that, Jeremy, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, we enjoy politics, and we enjoy conservatism, and we enjoy less government. So it's just something that we both love. So. All right, so what's the biggest difference between the House and the Senate? That's the House. You just saw an example of the House in action. That's what it does. It moves things, and it moves them quickly without any thought or regard for anything around it. So the difference in the Senate is everyone in the Senate is equal. Okay, so everyone has an equal right. So the structures are different. The structure is different in the House. Here is the power structure in the House. We have the Speaker, we have the Majority Floor Leader, we have the Speaker again, and I'll get to that. I'll explain why he's on there twice. And then we also have the committee chair. Okay, just about anything that's done in the House, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just about everything that's done in the House, this is what ebbs the tide for absolutely everything that occurs. And so this is the power structure in the House. First things first, we have the Speaker. The Speaker controls everything. If you want something done, he probably needs to be on board. If you want something stopped, he probably needs to be on board. Now, generally speaking, most representatives are allowed to hire and fire their own staff. But if he really wanted to, he could probably fire anyone on the House side that he wants to. He could throw a representative out of their office if he wanted to. He could choose where they sit on the floor. He could choose where they park. He controls a lot. Some of the most important stuff, though, that he controls is committee assignments. He controls who's on which committees, and he controls the chair of those committees. So that's very, very important. The other important item that he does is he refers all bills, okay? So if he's going to be the one that moves the bill to the committee, he's going to be the one that puts it on the calendar. So the bill flow and what occurs is all up to the Speaker. So he controls the committee assignments and the bill referrals, and that's where his true large power comes from. All right, so what is a bill? A bill is a piece of paper. I mean, you often go to the website, you read the PDF file on there or anything, but you got to remember, a bill is actually a physical piece of paper. Okay, the representative has it drafted by research. They turn it over to the chief clerk, and they turn it in, they sign it, and be like, hey, I am filing this bill. The chief clerk actually prepares a folder specifically for this bill alone and puts this bill in that folder, and that becomes the official bill. Then it goes to the floor for first read. It goes to the floor for second read, and they're basically just declaring, hey, so-and-so filed the bill, and this is what it does. Okay. Then it says in the chief clerk's office, it is under the purview of the Speaker. So I am a sponsor of a bill. I filed my bill. I actually have no more control of my bill now. I have actually given up complete control over my bill. The Speaker now has control of my bill. He has the authority to refer it. Every bill has to be referred in the House. It is the rule. There is not a rule that says when he must refer it. He could refer it on the very last day of session if he wants to. So if your bill is not getting referred, your bill's likely to die. Now, sponsors, they talk to the speaker's office, they talk to the speaker's staff, be like, hey, we'd like to have it referred. This is where we would like to have it referred to, which committee we would have. But the end there is the speaker has full control over that. He can send it to whatever committee he wants to, and he controls what. You'll notice on the very last day of session, hundreds of bills are referred. That's because they never wanted to do absolutely anything with them. Let's see here. He also he chooses the committee chairs, and so we'll get to that. All right. We picked a champion of freedom, Eric Burleson. He also got a 100% with us. He's actually from the Springfield area. My capture for this one is possession is 9/10 of the law. Okay. So he takes the bill and he refers it to a committee. And so if he was referring it to Eric, the chief clerk's office would actually call up Eric's office and say, hey, the speaker is referring this bill to you. And so the staffer from Eric's office would then walk over to the chief clerk's office, pick up the bill, and then walk to their office, and they usually have a file cabinet where they keep all of their bills. Now the chairman has control over the bill. The chair has the ability to kill it also. Okay, so the chair doesn't ever have to actually have a hearing. He can do what we call throw it in the drawer, meaning he's never going to take it out, nothing's ever going to happen. Or you can have a hearing. Hearings are entirely public, and so if there is a hearing, you all are more than welcome to come. Okay, you bring your friends, bring your co-conspirators, get everyone out there. Hearings must have 24-hour notice. That's what makes it difficult. So if there is a bill that you're really looking on and you've got work or you've got other things that you have to do, keep in mind, they only have to give you 24-hour notice when they're going to actually hear that bill. Some of them, though, if you know which committee that they're in, oftentimes committees meet at the same time every week in the same hearing room. So if you know that the education meeting or the education committee meets on Tuesdays at 8 a.m., then you can be prepared, be like, hey, I need to kind of keep that slot open because if they bring up my bill that I care about, I need to be there. They may limit testimony. There's a small window of time that they can have a hearing. They cannot have a hearing while the House is in session. I don't believe Senate committees can either. So they can only have their hearings while they're out of session. And there's other committees that have to meet in the same room, so there's very limited time. So make sure that whenever you're preparing your testimony to come in support or opposing a bill, that you try to wrap it up as well and you make your point precisely and succinctly. And so that way you get through your testimony quickly. Especially if there's a lot of people testifying. If you get into like right to work, Mary's been to several of those committee hearings and they pack the room and there's a lot of people there. And so oftentimes, the chairman wants to get through a lot of people, and as many people as he possibly can. So sometimes, especially if they have their expert witnesses go first, you need to just basically go up and be like, hey, my name's Jeremy. I'm with the Missouri Alliance for Freedom, registered lobbyist, and we don't believe this bill actually supports freedom. We ask you to oppose it, and then we move on. You know what I mean? Because they've already gone through and had hearings, and so sometimes we just want to keep it quickly. This is also important in the Senate. I know a lot of times, the senators are like, I don't want you repeating or anything like that. Let's go. So make sure that you keep that in mind. Then after they have a public hearing, oftentimes, and it doesn't have to be the case, they go into executive session right after the hearing. Usually, let me explain executive session real fast. Executive session is where the committee can make changes to a bill. And so that's where an amendment to the bill can be filed by other people on the committee, or a substitute can be filed. Okay, so you have the public hearing first for a particular, or you have a public hearing, and they might hear 2, 3, 4 bills. Then they switch over into executive session. There's no public input at this point, and this is where the committee deliberates within itself. That's where they make their changes.
Well, I thought tons of those witness forms, that were issues that I'm passionate about. Do they make a difference? Did anybody look at them? Yes
and no. And I know a lot of groups try to sometimes, make sure that they've got a lot of them there. And sometimes that can really play another factor. Sometimes it just gets thrown into a file or a folder, and that's the last anyone ever sees of them. And so if it depends on the chairman, it depends on the sponsor, because a lot of times, the sponsor of the bill, whenever they're having their hearing, and they have a lot of people like you all send in your witness form saying, hey, we support this, and the sponsor really makes, a big deal of it. Look, hey, we've really got folks.
But when I go down there and I show up for, against Agenda 21 or, against Common Core or, for right to work, those type of things, does that have a huger impact?
And I would say yes to that. And the other thing with that too, because a lot of times, right to work, we've done a lot of hearings with that. We've been through it year after year after year, and unions will pack that room full. And one after another, no, and they'll know how 5 of us go up there and say yes, and we have 100 people that say no. What's the committee to think? You know what I mean? As a very good example, this last week we had Convention of the States had a hearing. And so Keith Carmichael was there. They brought in Michael Ferris, and so they all witnessed. And they did a really good job of packing the room though. A really fantastic job. And so whenever the House members were coming into the hearing room to hear this bill that they didn't think was of any importance whatsoever, all of a sudden they saw 150 people in there going, we're all for this. And they were like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Yeah, exactly. It's so yes. And so if a lot of times, sometimes people just send in the form, that's great. Sometimes it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. But if we can pack the room and we can actually voice that opinion a little bit more and show the people, show the legislators that we're there to support them, because, oftentimes they think, a lot of times whenever they're looking at whether or not they're going to support the bill and they're going to go back to their constituents and everything, they're kind of, in their mind, they're kind of going, this is what's against. If I'm running for re-election this time, this is what's against me and this is what's for me. You know what I mean? And if we can increase that for me and offset that against me a little bit better, oftentimes that does make a difference. So being there in person definitely does. Yes, I agree. So executive sessions. That's where they make the changes, and that's where they also vote on the bills to pass them out of committee. Procedurally, all bills, all those of, right now we have the majority caucus, Republicans right now. Procedurally, if you're a Republican and you're in committee, you are expected to vote with your chairman 100% of the time. That is the procedure. If you vote against your chairman, you should very, very much have permission to do so. And sometimes they do grant that. Sometimes they don't care. They're like, I don't care about this bill, vote however you want to. If they do care about it, you better vote with them. Otherwise, you could be removed from that committee.
You won't be on that committee very long.
Yeah, exactly, very much so. Just like the speaker, he chooses the chairman. And if there's a bill that he sends to that committee and he wants that bill out, and that committee chairman doesn't do it, guess what he's going to do? He's going to find himself a new chairman. He will get his bill, one way or the other. And just like that for a chairman. A chairman wants his bill passed through, he's going to make sure that he wants his folks with him. And so oftentimes what you hear is you can vote however you want on the floor, but while you're in my room, this is what you need to do.
And we need to make sure we have a conservative speaker.
And so procedurally, that's something that you got to keep in mind. Is a lot of times your representatives, even those that are with us, a lot of times, I mean, they're very much expected to follow procedure, and that is one of those procedural things. Okay, so they are expected to vote with their chairman, and that's the other thing too. Do we say vote no procedurally, and you're removed off that committee, therefore no longer have a voice on said committee? Or do you follow the procedure? So there's a lot there to kind of consider and everything, but that's just some of the things to kind of keep in mind. So executive session, they will vote a bill do pass or do fail. If the chairman's bringing it up for a vote, usually they're voting it do pass. And so what it does now is they actually changed the committee. It used to be all bills, they have all their standing committees. Bills went to those committees that were passed out, and they were all referred to the Rules Committee. And so everything was siphoned through one committee that could stop or change or do whatever to all those. Now they actually broke it up rules into different select committees per issue type of base. And so they might have a select education, select utilities, and then they have the standing committees that are within the education area. They all direct up to that select committee. And then they also have an executive session. They don't have to have a public hearing whatsoever. So it goes to a new chairman of a new committee, and they have an executive session. It's open to the public, so you can go there, but they don't have to take any public input. And then they get to make whatever changes that they want to said bill, and then move it on. Now, I did say that the sponsor has lost control of their bill, and they have. Oftentimes, they're still asked for input of what they want regarding the bill, but that does not guarantee what they're wanting is going to actually occur. So if someone's wanting to put an amendment on it in committee, and they're going, no, I don't want that amendment, well, I do. If the chair wants it, it's going on. If the speaker wants it, it's going on there. So it's one of those things. I mean, oftentimes we try to, sometimes we ding, sponsors for a bill, that reached the floor. In reality, that was not what they originally filed in the first place, And so you're kind of like, that wasn't really mine, and so now I'm carrying something that's got a whole lot, especially with the omnibus bills. And one of the good things that that the speaker did do this year is he has kept things single subject a lot more than previous. And so and it's fantastic. And so in the House side this year, you see a lot of bills that are, this is all it is. This is all it is. And so he's wanted each bill to actually come to the House floor and pass on its own merit instead of being a grouping. Because a lot of times what happens with your groupings, you have something that a majority of people won't vote for. You have another item that a majority of people will not vote for. You have another item that a majority of people won't vote for. But you wrap it up together, and everyone's got something in there that they like, and it gets through. And that's how omnibus bills work. So they have done a very good job of actually keeping it very single subject this year. So then the bill goes back to the speaker. And so if the executive session of the select committee, they pass, that bill actually goes back to the clerk's office, back into the speaker's control. And it is up to the speaker to then put it on the calendar. Then once it's on the calendar, then it becomes the majority floor leaders under their control, basically. So the majority floor leader gets to choose if and when that bill comes to the floor. So during this process, once it's put onto the calendar, other reps can start putting amendments on it, and Mark had shown on the Senate website where you can see the amendments and everything. That's when they can start putting amendments on there. But the majority floor leader controls when it actually gets brought up on the floor, or if it even does. There was actually a few years ago, and kind of to show the majority floor leaders' kind of ability and power and authority here as well, as there was a couple of years ago, the majority floor leader was wanting the speaker to put a bill on the calendar because it was something that he truly wanted to hear on the floor, have a debate on, and actually probably get a vote and probably sent to the Senate on. And the speaker disagreed with the bill. They were just opposed, philosophically to the legislation in question. And there was 2 weeks. Nothing occurred because the speaker wouldn't put that bill on the calendar. He was putting all sorts of other bills on the calendar. He wouldn't put that particular bill on the calendar. And the majority floor leader said, well, if you don't put that on the calendar, I'm not bringing nothing up. And so they would come into session, gavel in. They'd go to the majority floor leader and be like, hey, so what are we going to today? Announcements. And then we're going home. And so then that's what they would do. Day in and day out, they didn't do anything else. And so the majority floor leader does have a little, and sometimes, things occur and they push back a little bit. But generally speaking, everyone works together, but they do have the ability and the authority to kind of step their foot up a little bit and be like, hey, we're going to actually, make a little bit of a stand here. So, but once it's on the calendar, this is the gentleman that controls it. Once it's brought up on the floor, though, it actually goes back to the speaker. Now, Not necessarily the speaker as in the gentleman that was elected to be the Speaker of the Missouri House. This is the speaker, the person that runs the dais. So we have the speaker who has first priority of being on the dais. And so if the Speaker of the House currently wants to be on the dais, he can walk up there, take control, and he's running the floor. If he's not up there, it's the Speaker pro tem. That's who I used to work for, Shane Troller, while he was pro tem. If the Speaker pro tem is not up there, they can choose any other legislator on the floor and be like, hey, come on up here, you're going to run the floor for the time being. But they control what happens on the floor. Unlike the Senate, where if someone stands up and says, hey, I want to be called on the House side, oh, I didn't see you. They control absolutely everything on the floor. They control which motions are called on, which people are called on, which amendments are made, which point of orders are made. Basically, everything that occurs on the House floor is absolutely 100% orchestrated. I used to help with this. This is how I know this. I drafted the orchestrations. So what happens is I would go through, I would find out every amendment that was on the calendar to be on that bill. I would find out if it was a good amendment, find out if the sponsor does have a say on a lot of this stuff. And so I'd meet with the sponsor and be like, hey, this is what's coming up on your bill. Which of these do you like? Which of these do you do not like? I would meet with leadership and be like, hey, because they do have overriding power over the sponsor, and be like, hey, which ones of these do you like or do not like? And then I would actually put together a plan line by line. And so whenever a bill was brought up on the floor, I could walk up to the dais, hand it to whoever was up there and be like, this is the order that you call everyone on. And so that's what happened. And so basically they would go down that list line by line, and not to say that they always stuck to it, a lot, they do call on dissenters. They do still, oftentimes they do still want to do it. They have a lot of control, but they still can't force feed everything, because at the end of the day, they still have to have a majority of votes to go through. So they can't completely alienate everyone. Sorry. But they still can't alienate everyone. They have to have the votes to get it to the Senate. But at the same time, it is all very much controlled, and it's all organized, and it's all basically a plan. And so you put together a plan, the bill comes up, we execute the plan, move on to the next bill. And that's exactly how it works. And it's actually kind of funny. During the campaign season, we have folks that would be term limited out. So this would be their last year, their senior year, even Democrats. And we would actually bring them up on the dais, and because they try to let everyone actually have at least one opportunity to control the floor and everything like that. And even the Democrats, even if it was a Republican bill, a conservative bill, they follow the plan. Line by line by line by line. If they don't, what happens? They get yanked off the dais, and we'll throw someone up there that'll actually do what we want. So that's basically how the floor works. A lot of times, the amendment process, though, can be a very good way to get what you want done. Okay, if it's not going to go through the hearing, I know you had spoke before about single subject and about the amending process and making bills too big. A lot of the times, though, sneaking something on via an amendment process is a very good way to accomplish it. And there is actually many lobbyists in the Capitol building that is the only way they do and move legislation. They never have hearings. They'll never have a bill filed. They have their language written up, and that any bill that falls within the subject heading of that bill or opens up the chapter of statute of that bill, they have their friendly legislators all file amendments for it, and they'll just try to throw it on absolutely everything that kind of fits within that purview time and time again. And so the amendment process, it can be used for good, but oftentimes, it's used to, throw all sorts of stuff on. Yes?
Is the state different than the feds in that the feds can throw anything on anything, but you just mentioned it has to be within the purview?
So it's got to be within, on the state side.
It has to be education.
And again, this is completely up to the interpretation of whoever is on the dais of whether or not it fits within the subject of, yes. And so it is entirely up to 100% up to the person that's on the dais. And they can say, nope, that's not germane, or yes, it is. Now, that's the other side, though, is if it's not germane, you have to have another House member actually just stand up and point of order and say, hey, this is not germane to the bill, you need to throw it out. And that's what I would do with my position, is I would actually go through and be like, hey, this is an amendment that we don't like. I would actually go out onto the House floor, find someone to point of order it, so whenever someone offered that amendment, they would immediately stand up, the Speaker would know, hey, I need to call them immediately following this person to, boom, point of order it, the amendment's dead, and we don't have to worry about it any longer. And so that was all, again, part of the plan. All right, so they finally, again, on the House side, they can PQ it, previous question. And we use the PQ liberally on the House side. Every bill just about has a PQ. Every member has 15 minutes to speak if they get called on. And yeah, 15 minutes if they get called on. So, but if they're tired of kind of going through it, it's time to move on to something else. The majority floor leader will stand up. The majority floor leader does generally have priority to be called on the House floor. So if the majority floor leader does stand up, raise his hand, usually the Speaker will go to them very next, no matter what. Not always the case, but most of the time that's what occurs. So he'll often PQ the bill. PQs are procedural votes. They're always party line. So whether or not the legislator actually agrees with the bill or not with the bill, if you're in the majority caucus, you are expected to vote with the PQ 100% of the time. And sometimes there are reprimands if you start falling outside of that rule. Unwritten rule, but a rule. Then floor debate ends. They vote on it. Perfection is generally a voice vote unless they have enough people to actually call for a roll call vote when it's actually a vote on record. Then after the perfection, it goes to third read. And so third read, no debate. Oh, well, sorry, I take that back. There is open debate, no changes though. And so third read is, hey, we're done with this. We're done making changes with this. We voted perfection. It gets closed off and then reprinted as this is the actual final bill that the House is sending out. Then it gets brought up for debate one last time. They vote on it one last time, and then they send it back over. And I think I actually got this picture from you, Dwayne, so thank you very much. Then it goes to the Senate, and again, the process starts all over, but luckily we have a bunch of breaks in the Senate that like to slow things down. So after the Senate works on it, they make their changes to it. It does go to a conference committee, and again, the Speaker controls everything. All the members that are chosen from the House side that are on the conference, well, the majority members that are on the House side, not the minority, but the majority members are all chosen by the Speaker. Usually whenever they go into those deliberations, so the House has their bill and the Senate has their bill. And on a conference committee, they're not discussing any of the stuff that each bill has identical. And so they don't really care about that type of stuff. It's the stuff that is different. And so the Senate has made some changes, the House has made some changes, and so these bills are different in these areas. So that's what they bring up for deliberation in the conference committee. And oftentimes the House Speaker will appoint those folks for the House side of that committee. And he will make, whenever he appoints that committee, he says, whenever you go to that conference committee, this is what you're supporting. And this is what will let you, you can kind of work with the Senate on this stuff, but this is stuff that you're definitely, if the Senate doesn't agree to this, then we're just going to walk away for the day. You know what I mean? So that doesn't always happen, but that is something to kind of think about there too, though. So then after conference committee, it goes back to both chambers, and they both have to agree on all those changes that they made there. So that is basically the House side. And so we have 163 more members, or we have 163 members, far more than the Senate. But unlike the Senate, it is basically all the power is shrunk down to a handful of people. Yes.
Earlier in your comments, you mentioned that you were a registered lobbyist.
Yes.
Now, what is the difference between just a lobbyist, like us people that go down there to fight for?
You're a concerned citizen, and you're going there to work on something that you care deeply about. I'm actually in the Capitol. Ryan and myself, we're both in the Capitol building very often. We're speaking with variety of legislators a lot of the time, and so to make sure that we're within the purview of the law and we're not outside of it, we actually go through there and file. So
is that different from paid lobbyists, or like ones that like
you get a lot of your corporate folks that basically like Anthem. Where's Anthem? Oh, Anthem. Right, Blue Cross Blue Shield. We were discussing that. Yeah, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield actually hires someone for their company to make sure that they're lobbying for their company. And so, if bills are passed, they want bills that are going to make sure that their company profits more and not profits less. So that is their sole goal. And so, and it's funny because there are items that we will agree with Anthem on and be like, yes, this is good for healthcare, this is good for freedom of healthcare, and so forth and so on. But then there are items that we do not. And so there's a lot of issues that we agree with on hospitals but Medicaid expansion is not one of them. But they'll go and they continue this fight nonstop, and they're there all the time. That's why we need folks like you being involved all the time too. They're not going to quit. They've been told continuously, day after day after day, Medicaid expansion is dead in the state of Missouri. Yet they're spending millions of dollars to still get it passed. Why? Because they know if they keep at it, it's going to happen. And so, but that's what it is. Is they're there. They're there a lot of the times to watch out for their company or watch out for the organization. The Missouri Chamber of Commerce. Missouri Chamber of Commerce. A lot of times we agree with them on a lot of the stuff. Right to work, for instance. However, they also support Medicaid expansion, and so there's a lot of times you find yourself working with folks on one issue, and then you go to the very next hearing and you're opposing them on another. And so
that's the difference between MAF that's lobbying for issues, and you're not lobbying for.
We have a principled mission, and that's what we support. Okay, and so anything without outside of that mission is what we're going to oppose. Anything within that mission is what we're going to support. They lobby for their groups, and I mean, if Ryan was to go, yes.
I think the law is if you're paid to lobby, you need to register to lobby. If you spend the majority of your time lobbying for a living, that's what you do. You have to lobby. Citizens do not have to register to lobby. You could be a part of a non-for-profit organization, like say, I don't know, there's like Moms for Puppies or something, and even if you lobbied a lot, you don't have to register to lobby. The minute you're paid directly, if Moms for Puppies pay you to lobby, you need to register.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you turn the tide of influence when you go to a hearing and you realize that the chairman of the committee is very good friends with all the people that are voting for the lobbyists that are
well, I mean, you've heard it a couple of times before. Relationships are very important, and that's why your relationship is very important with your elected officials as well, because one of the things that I tell a lot of the freshmen that come in, whether senator or House members, is sometimes you get folks that come in, they're like, I want to file something, I want to get something done. Actually, one of their most important things to do is get to know their fellow colleagues and start building those relationships with them, so that way they can go to that chair and be like, you know what, I've got a lot of constituents back home that really have issues with this, really do, and that's very important. It's important for you to get to know your legislator, so then that way he can relay that information back over to those chairs. And if they are a chair, get to know them as well. If Common Core is your issue and education is what drives you, get to know the education chairs. You know what I mean? And reach out to them and make sure that that you tell them, hey, you're doing a great job on this. Well, on this one though, not so much. I mean, I think a lot of times one of the problems that we do have is we're very open and very strong and getting in there and opposing stuff, but whenever they do something, you're like, oh, that's nice of them. You know what I mean? Well, we need to be very much strong in that as well. And so,
just real quick, I thought mentioned this before, I didn't. Personalized is much better than anything. So you asked about the hearing notices, and it's a new trend where people are mailing or emailing hundreds of hearing notices, and that's great, that's good, but it's not as good as if those 100 people all picked up the phone and called. Each with their own message. When we get an email on it, like Medicaid expansion or whatever, and they're formatted emails, where you basically go to the website and click the button and it sends it to your, that matters a whole lot less than that personalized email. Hey, nice to meet you, nice to talk to you, this is what I think, in your own words.
And I guarantee
your own words will matter a whole lot more than anything formatted.
And stepping off of that, I guarantee you, because I mean, I've heard it said, even in hearings this past week, one senator actually called out a lobbyist that was testifying on a bill, in support of it, and the senator actually called out the lobbyist, and he's like, "Are you the reason I've got 500 form emails in my email box right now?" And I mean, and you wouldn't think it, it might not come across, whenever you're thinking about it. But if that happens, and they're all the exact same email, oftentimes you're garnering negativity towards your position. You know what I mean? Because they're sitting there going, I can't get my important emails now because I can't get the ones from my constituents that did personalize that, and they really, really kind of dislike that. So personalizing it and taking ownership of it and telling your personal story and how it affects you and your family is very important.